Sometimes it's difficult to know where we divide a text when we're doing textual analysis. Is it through the verses? Is it with punctuation? Those are all sort of questions that might be asked. Probably the most effective is first to find connecting words like finally, words like therefore. Those are very clearly is signaling to us that we're talking about the next thing or something else. And so there's divisions there. The second, and I think probably even most important thing to notice, is to look for action words, look for your verbs. So for example, we see here in Ephesians 6:10 through 13, the apostle says, "Finally, my brethren, be strong." And there's a very clear imperative, a very clear command. Be strong in the Lord and in the power of his might. Verse 11, put on, another clear imperative, the whole armor of God, that you may be able to stand against the wiles of the devil. For we do not wrestle against flesh and blood, but we do wrestle against principalities, against powers, against rulers of the darkness of this age, against spiritual hosts of wickedness in the heavenly places. Therefore, there's a connector word, therefore, followed by another very clear imperative verb, take up the whole armor of God, that you may be able to withstand in the evil day, having done all to stand. So find the connector words like finally, therefore, because of, those sort of words. Those are telling us that we're talking about different sections of Scripture. Find words, verbs, especially imperatives. Imperatives drive the sentences. Strong indicatives drive the sentences, drive the sections. And so if I were to arrange this, I would say, well, first of all, I see that each of these imperatives probably has a section to it. But these two, the second two imperative sentences, put on the whole armor of God and take up the whole armor of God. They're very similar. Whole armor of God. These are telling me that these are related. And so it seems that verse 10 is telling us the big picture, be strong. And then verses 11 through 13 are telling us something about that strength or about being strong. We might say it this way. The primary action is to be strong. How? How should we be strong? How are we strong? By putting on the armor of God. The manner is to put on the whole armor of God. But a third way to note different divisions is repetition, or we might say parallelism. I already mentioned how verse 11 and verse 13 are so similar. In fact, the verb put on and the verb take up, those two verbs, those imperatives are nearly identical. One's put something on, one's take it up on you, so it's the same idea. And then the repetition of the whole armor of God, the whole armor of God. This is telling me we're talking about two sections here. So this helps me mark out 11 and then 13. 11 and 12, and then 13 as two sections. We'll get to how those two are related, but let's just take each one of them separately. First, 11 and 12. Put on the whole armor of God, that you may be able to stand against the wiles of the devil. For we do not wrestle against flesh and blood, but against principalities, against powers, against the rulers of the darkness of this age, against spiritual hosts of wickedness in the heavenly places. Where are our connecting words or our joining words? And the clue words are here, that and for. Those two words are both telling us something about this primary command to put on the armor of God. Now, if you remember, when we see the word that, we're probably talking about either an action or a result. And here, a purpose or a result. Our action is to put on, and that you may be able to stand is either the result of putting on the armor of God or the purpose to put on the armor of God. Since it is an imperative command to do something, the expectation is that there is something yet to happen as a result. So we're actually looking at the purpose of putting on the whole armor of God is so that, with this purpose, that you be able to stand, be able to indicate something that is not yet accomplished. So the result hasn't yet happened. Therefore, it's a purpose. It's for this purpose to happen. So put on the armor of God so that, or with the purpose in mind, of standing against the devil. 4 logically brings us and answers another question. Why? Why does it matter? Why is it so important to put on the armor of God? I know the reason, the purpose why I should do it is to stand, but for what reason? Why do I need to even stand? Paul argues that it's because, and when you see the word for, often think of the word because. Because our battle is not against flesh and blood, but it is against principalities, powers, rulers of darkness of this age, against spiritual hosts, wickedness. It is against demonic wiles, demonic schemes, and schemers. Because the word we use, or the code we use for this, is the ground, the foundation, the ground upon which we see that this command to put on the whole armor of God is so important, is because we have a very serious battle and a very serious enemy. So put on the whole armor of God for the purpose of standing against your enemy. Put on the whole armor of God because you have a very powerful and dangerous and wicked and dark enemy. Purpose, ground. When you move to the second verb, which is very similar, you'll notice once again we have repetition. That you may be able, notice how this is very similar to what he's already said. Even using the word stand. Once again, evil, stand. So we're seeing very similar between verse 11 and verse 13, very parallel ideas. The command to take up and the command to put on, those two imperatives, they're not saying two different things. They're saying the same thing. Put it on, that is, take it up. And the reason why it seems that we're having this repetitive thing, this repetitive command, is because of just how evil our enemy is. It's dark, wicked, powerful. So Paul repeats himself. Put it on, take it up, the whole armor, every piece. Same purpose, our action, take up, and our purpose, that you may be able to withstand. The reason why we would go with purpose here is the same reason with purpose up in verse 11. He's telling us the reason for, or the purpose in, taking up the whole armor of God. The parallelism is very helpful here. Because he nearly says the same thing, or nearly identical thing in verse 13 as he does verse 11, then we can assume that the analysis is nearly identical. If the action is put on the whole armor of God, and the purpose is that you may be able to stand against the wiles of the devil, the action is to take up the whole armor of God, then the purpose is to be able to withstand in the evil day. So the parallelism, or the repetition, helps us make the same choice for both 11 and verse 13. So, review. Paul is telling the church to be strong in the Lord and the power of his might. How? How are we going to be strong? He's telling us there is a very clear action, very clear elements of action we must do, and that's why he is imperatives. And that is to put on the whole armor of God. That is to take up the whole armor of God. Why? Because our battle is a serious and evil one. What's the end goal? What's the purpose? To be able to stand against the schemes of the devil. To be able to withstand in the evil day that we assume is the devil's day. So we can stand. So this is what we call, finally here, an inference. This therefore is almost always inference. We use these 3 dots to describe an inference. And an inference is simply this. The first action spoken, put on the whole armor of God, implies the second action. And here it implies the second action by way of repetition, not by adding a new idea, but by repeating the same idea. And we just simply note that with this idea of an inference, or these 3 dots. And the word therefore, when you see that, just automatically assume almost every time it's an inferential statement, meaning one is derived from the other. The second one is derived from the first. If you put on the armor of God, you take up the whole armor of God. I hope that's helpful. God bless.